Hello and welcome to Career Stories, the podcast that shares other people's career stories to help you with yours. I'm Dr. Luella Forbes, and each week I sit down with leaders, experts and entrepreneurs to uncover the stories behind their careers. Listen every Wednesday for the latest career story. Hello and welcome to Career Stories, and this is the June Career Advice episode. I'm Dr. Luella Forbes.
And I'm Associate Professor Michelle Gander.
And this week we're going to be talking about career types. But before we get into that, maybe we'll just talk about what we've been up to during June.
Yeah.
Michelle, what have you been up
What
to?
have I been up to? June's been pretty quiet. I'm just like in the thick of work, but I did have to travel to Brisbane to go to so I'm on a board and we meet a couple of times a year face to face. So this was for a board meeting, an AGM and then a board meeting. So I went up there.
Is it warmer in Brisbane at the moment than it is in Perth?
Yes, although it was raining.
Okay.
But it was definitely warmer.
Great.
So I had a very nice dinner in a new restaurant in Brisbane, which was lovely. And then I treated myself to a business class upgrade flight on the way home. Thank goodness, because it was so windy in Brisbane and Perth that the flight took 6 hours from Brisbane. It was awful. It was like doing long haul, but you're literally just going from one side of the country to the other. So I was glad I paid that. I did the bid thing that you can do, and so got it. So that was really great. And whilst I was there, the board voted me on as deputy chair. So
congratulations.
Thank you very much. So I've just created more work for myself. Anyway.
I know it's these things we volunteer for sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. So that was good. It was nice to see everybody. There's something about being in person rather than just the square on the Teams call every 6 weeks or so.
It definitely makes a difference. I think particularly if you're in Perth and it's so much harder to it is just so much further to get to the East Coast and do catch-ups than maybe if you're in Brisbane or...
Yeah, that's right. People seem to fly up
Melbourne
and down.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
It does make a difference,
It does make a difference. And what else did I do? I was going to say one other thing that I did that I've completely forgotten.
Okay.
It'll come back to
me. So last month I was talking about my kind of identity crisis, I
yes,
guess.
That's right.
Post finishing my doctorate. And so I've taken my own advice. I've been doing some work with a business coach, which has been exciting. We did a strategy day on Monday. And I think I'm now trying to be really comfortable in the uncertainty and just kind of let things evolve a little bit. And it's quite nice having that for a bit, like taking the pressure off myself, I think.
Yeah. And you don't have to make the decision.
I don't need to make need to make a decision yet. I've got a couple of irons in the fire, which I can't really talk about yet. But
I do know what they are.
But Michelle knows what they are. And so, I think there's some exciting things ahead. I think the clear space is now exciting for me, which is
that's good.
Which is great. And so I can see lots of potential, and I am just working through options. One of the options is doing some more speaking. And I mentioned that I spoke at a conference, and then this month I spoke for a senior leadership team. And I've been working on a kind of speech about how do you communicate change?
Yeah, great.
Particularly, how do you communicate difficult change messages to your organisation? It went really well. I really love doing it. So hopefully I'm going to get to do some more of that in the coming months. And then the other thing that I have been doing has been nerding out for the Football World Cup. And I've decided that you can call it football during the World Cup.
Oh, yeah.
Because
everybody else
does.
In the world
calls it football. But I thought it might be interesting. There's been a couple of interesting things that have come out in the last couple of weeks that I think show you a lot about kind of leadership and culture and values. And I thought maybe it would be interesting to share.
Interesting. I've not watched anything. I do not like football.
That's fine. I think this is still, hopefully it will still be interesting.
I'll find it interesting.
So one was about, I saw there were a couple of conversations with players who had not been selected for their national teams.
Oh, yes.
About how it was communicated to them that they would not be selected.
Very up your street.
Very up my street. It just spoke so loudly to me. And it was really interesting. So a couple of countries got different approaches. Brazil just do a TV announcement and announce it to everybody at the same time to the public.
Right. So the players don't know beforehand.
No, so the players and their families are watching it and the public is watching it and everybody finds out at exactly the same time.
Okay.
And, you know, there's definitely some organisations that implement change that way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that is the kindest way to do it. Then I was watching one of the England players was being interviewed about how he found out that he wasn't in the team. And I'll be honest, I felt really sorry for the poor guy because they grilled him for about 15 minutes on how sad he was that he wasn't in the team. And I was like, guys, he's sad, all right.
Yeah, that's right. It's like that's the given.
Yeah. You move on. You don't
4 years trying to be good enough to get picked.
You don't need to rub it into the poor guy. But anyway, the thing that was interesting was that he got a text message from his coach and he got asked for a FaceTime or a kind of video call with his coach, and his coach kind of explained the rationale. And I think that's a much better way to do it. The downside of this particular approach is that the media found out half an hour before his call.
Oh, no.
And so he was already getting wind of it first.
Yeah.
And so he kind of was going into the call kind of already kind of knowing and so I
knowing
think,
but not knowing.
And so I think if you're going to soften the blow by delivering the message in person, you actually want to do all the bad news first and then the good news second. So I think what had happened is the players that got picked got told first and then the ones who didn't get picked got told was actually, in my experience, it should be the other way around, that you go and give the bad news because you don't want people to be finding out bad news in the kitchen. You know, in an office situation, you don't want people to be finding out from other people in the kitchen or, you know, whatever. You want them to be finding out from you. But if it's good news, nobody minds finding that out in the kitchen. Yeah. So I just thought that was really interesting, really kind of couple of different
Also,
ways.
I think it really highlights how, you know, when we're working in our kind of, you know, corporate settings or whatever, and we say things to people, all sorts of change processes, but we're like, we reiterate, that's hard to say in the morning, about the confidentiality of those conversations, because obviously you have individual conversations with people and you want all of them to have done, and everyone knows in the privacy of an office or whatever it might be. And I think people don't really understand that. They just, because you know, gossip is rife and all of that, and it would be in the same way with football. But actually it's really important because, as you say, you don't want to be the one somebody's got to be scheduled last in the meetings, right? Exactly. But you don't want all of that gossip to have gone around before you get to speak to that person. And I'm sure in that conversation they would have offered some sort of support or counselling, you know, especially, you know, UK soccer, that's a I said soccer. Football, it's football, I'm British. So I think it's just really relevant to our working lives as well.
And I mean the principle that I always say, and you know, we're talking about big decisions here, but I think it's the same whether you're talking about smaller things too, that people should be hearing about the impact on them from their manager. They should not be hearing it from the press, from somebody in the kitchen, from, you know, their mate. And it is difficult. And, you know, quite often when I'm working with organisations who are having kind of conversations about structure, which aren't always about redundancy or anything, by the way. But there is a timing thing about the order that you have the conversations in to make sure that, you know, the people who are able to deduce stuff kind of by elimination are the ones who are going to have the really good news. Yeah. And if anybody's having more difficult news, be that just even if it's just a change in boss, for example, then they should hear that first from their manager. So that was one thing. There was another thing that I thought was really interesting, which is about how the things that we say when we're having a chat with our friends/colleagues is really a reflection of our values and who we are as people. And so I've been talking a lot about this recently with one of my clients, and who's a director general in the WA public sector. And they talk about, you know, the things you say in the kitchen being the things that kind of represent who you are. Yeah. And I think there's a couple of similar examples of this that I've seen this week watching the coverage of the World Cup. So there's an American commentator who has gone viral on all of the social media because he has been very disrespectful about the Socceroos.
Oh, right.
And so America and Australia are in the same group. Yeah. They're going to play each other. And he basically said, I wasn't worried when Australia got picked in our group because, let's face it, I don't know who any of them are. You know, we don't play, our team play football all the time competitively every week in Europe. And, you know, I've never heard of any of these players, therefore they must be terrible. And I mean, it's gone viral in Australia, as you can imagine.
Yes, indeed.
Because the Australians are like, hang on a second, dude, what are you talking about?
Yeah, American football.
Yeah. And it's not like the Americans are a famous footballing nation either. Exactly. I mean, the two countries that call it soccer, basically. But then the contrast was that there was an English ex-professional football player, Gary Lineker.
Oh, yes.
Who is also known as a broadcaster in the UK. And he went on American television and they asked him what chances the USA had of winning the World Cup. Which might be a similar kind of conversation, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And whereas what he said was, you know, do you want me to be honest or do you want me to be diplomatic? And he said, look, realistically, you don't really have a chance. I think you could do quite well, but realistically, you know, there are quite a few teams above you in the rankings, which is just completely factual and fair. But it was an interesting contrast for me, the two styles of conversation. And so they're both kind of informal conversations where people are giving their opinion, but one of them is quite kind of disrespectful and quite arrogant and quite kind of, I don't know who you are, so therefore you must be terrible. A quite uninformed perspective. Whereas the other one was quite kind of respectful, quite educated, like this is the evidence that I have. Yeah. This is the you know, and asking them how they wanted him to respond in a kind of humorous way. Yeah. And I just think that those are two really interesting examples of how who you are as a leader comes across in what you say. Yeah. So if you're having a conversation in the kitchen, that is like, these guys don't know what on earth they're doing. That is what people believe you are and say and think. And
no, absolutely. And it really highlights that actually it's more of a reflection on that American pundit. Actually, it's literally his job to know the people in the Socceroos and to know where all of the countries come in the scheme of course, some countries are better than others. That's just how sports works, right?
Well, and to say that the
there's a bit of
Australian-
luck sometimes, in England and penalties and, all of that. There is definitely luck.
Yeah,
but, it's literally, it shows his kind of lack of
awareness.
leadership.
Yeah, and
Right.
leadership. And also for him to kind of say, our team play all the time in Europe. And it's kind of like, well, so did the Australian team. Like, yeah, so a really uninformed opinion. And look, I'm going for England. I've been English longer than I've been Australian. But I was really, really excited when Socceroos won 2-0 in their first game against Turkey, who, in the rankings, probably, were pushing their luck. And I really hope they smashed the USA.
Yeah. And I think all of Australia would have thought that, but even more so.
That's my kind of spotlight on football for this month. I'm sure I will have more exciting stories for you next month.
They were really good, though, really good examples of kind of leadership in action kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I just think that sometimes it's really useful to look at something like this, which is a high pressure environment, as a kind of really kind of focused zoom in on kind of how the things you say and the things you do come across.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're not here to talk
That's good, because I really don't have anything to add. I basically said yes the whole way through that. So.
We're not here to talk about football. So this month's interviews.
Yes.
We had 3 this month. We had Anita Owen, who is Chief Delivery Officer for Navigi, who are they're actually based in Wollongong, I think.
Oh, okay.
But she's based in Melbourne. We had Claudine Bessler. You like my French accent?
I did.
Who has spent 32 years working at Mars.
That's
and
amazing.
Royal Canine Pet Foods. And I really loved, she's very French. I really loved how she wanted to work in a sweet shop when she was a kid, and then ended up working for a sweet company.
As she said, I think on the interview, it's like literally one of the only people that have kind of got some kind of alignment with what they wanted to do when they were young.
And, I think she talked really well about kind of how she'd learned and put herself out there during a long career in one organisation.
I actually just wanted to say, I think, it's a really positive kind of reflection of Mars, I guess, is that she's obviously an amazing woman, but coming from R&D into sales and marketing and leading that whole, good on Mars, right, for saying here's a really talented person, and I know you don't know anything about marketing, but we think you can succeed anyway. That is kind of what we would want all of our organisations to recognise people's talent and manage it, but most don't, I think.
Yeah, I think let's come back to that, because I think I've got some thoughts on that as well. And then we have had Simon Johnson, who is based in Sydney, who is a sales leader for DocuSign and also worked at Google and shared some interesting insights into
I did like your question, like what's Google offices really like?
To his experience working at Google. I love the example that you gave about kind of the Japanese Michelin star sushi restaurant.
Yeah. You know what it reminded me of? Like he was talking about the Google offices. It just reminded me of a university campus, right? It's like you've got all of these food outlets, you've got all of these facilities, but it's kind of like in this corporate setting. And plus I think it was all free at Google. It's not free on a university campus, but that's what it kind of reminded me of.
Yeah, exactly. And, for me, particularly working in the new ECU building in the city is kind
It's just won an award.
It's just won a whole bunch of awards.
Oh yes, I saw the architect. Thingy.
There was a whole load of them at that award ceremony that they won. And it's still exciting to go there every time I go.
Yeah.
The classroom ends up just being a classroom.
Yeah.
But there are lots of really amazing features. And so I do think the office you're in makes a difference.
Oh, definitely.
So because we've had a few different I feel like we had a bit of a mixture this month. And because I've been talking about, I guess, my career decisions and I have a portfolio career, I thought maybe this week we could talk about the different career types.
Sure.
So we've got a kind of the traditional career, which I think is more like Claudine's experience,
Yes,
which is, you know, going in at one organisation and staying there.
And very rare nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a portfolio career, which is more like what I'm doing, where I'm doing a mixture of things.
Yeah.
I'm doing a bit of consulting, I'm doing a bit of speaking, I'm doing a bit of teaching, I'm doing a bit of a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I might add different things
to that
mix.
Right. Yeah.
And then are there other types as well?
There's lots of different types of career. I mean, I think if you think about, so I think about two kind of career orientations, I suppose, in a way. So you talked about the traditional career, and we kind of think now, we talk about that and I'm talking about in kind of, you know, scholarly academic circles. I think I read the first article in 1996 that said the organisational career was dead. Yeah, right, Clearly the organisational career is not dead. And I've just read a recent article, like published, I think maybe last year, that actually researched on university students. And they aligned with many factors of wanting a traditional career. So the traditional career is far from dead. And that's not really a surprise when you think about what a traditional career means. It means that you've got job security, right? It's like you've got, or as much job security as anyone can have nowadays. Like back in the, you know, we kind of think of the traditional career kind of dying out a bit in the late 70s, early 80s because of the big economic shocks that went through the world. You know, big organisations like Mars, for example, would have delayered all of their management structures. There would have been a lot of redundancies. I mean, when I graduated in 93, there was a recession on, right, because of the ongoing impacts of this. So we think about it in terms of, you know, traditional career, quite patriarchal in a way. Loyalty was expected from you, but also on the flip side, you got loyalty from the organisation. They would manage your career for you. So a bit like, you know, with the Mars example of going, well, we've got this amazing person over here. We think we should, you know, give them the next step up, but it just means going to this department over here.
Well, I think Jo Lindsay, who I interviewed, who was my manager from Birmingham, she's been at Reed for a long time. And I think I find it interesting because, so when we're thinking about these traditional careers, what we're talking about is people kind of progressing from being a junior all the way up an organisation through the course of their career. And I think the reality is that organisations, if you think of your career as almost kind of like, or kind of an organisation structure like a pyramid, then, you know, there are less roles at a senior level than there are at a junior level. Yeah. So it is not possible for every single person to have a traditional career. Yes. Because otherwise you would need the same number of senior roles as you have the same number of junior roles. So that's not possible. Yeah. And so I think if I look at Jo and Claudine, what they both talked about was kind of making their own opportunities as well as the organisation offering them to them. Yeah. So they would kind of go and seek out stuff as well as the organisation sort of saying, and it's, as you say, that kind of give and take.
Yes. So we call it like that reciprocal relationship between the individual and the organisation. And you could be somebody that worked for Mars that was quite happy. You know, you go in whatever job, you do that job, you're happy, you might go for one other type promotion or whatever. Because not everybody is also going to want to rise to leading a brand strategy for, or whatever the equivalent might be. So, and don't get me wrong, like when we talk about the traditional career, like there were problems with organisations, like they were very good for white men, right?
Yes.
Back in the 70s.
Maybe they still are.
And maybe they still are. Don't we have more CEOs called John than women CEOs or something?
Yeah.
But nowadays, like they're traditional careers, but they're wrapped in this contemporary career environment, I suppose. Well, of course, like you're going to get restructured at some point.
Yes.
There is talent management, but as lots of people have said that you've interviewed, actually, you also have to be really proactive and you have to take opportunities, get outside your comfort zone, be curious. In fact, I think, was it Anita?
Yeah.
I think she mentioned things that we talked about in every one of our
chats,
right? Stay curious, like be proactive, all of these types of things. So you still have to have all of those kind of more contemporary skills to manage your career, even if you decide that one organisation is where you feel at home, I suppose, in a way.
But also I think, so, going through the process of trying to find people to interview, and I've spent quite a lot of time looking at people's careers on LinkedIn and things. And I do think that bigger organisations, so we have a guest coming up from McDonald's, we've talked to people who've worked in Big Four consulting, although they're obviously not flavour of the month at the moment.
That's right.
We've talked to, Joe and Claudine. So Mars is obviously a massive global company. So I think those really big companies definitely see the value in investing in their people. And for the people that they deem to be talent, then they look after them to help them progress. I think the challenge is that for smaller organisations, it's harder to invest in that because you don't have the
resources.
You don't have the resources, you don't have the time, you don't have the money, all of that stuff. But also, not everyone is going to be in the top 5%.
No, that's right.
At whichever organisation you're at. And so I think there's a bit of luck in
of course,
in this as well. But
I also think you make your own luck to a certain extent as well. Like I've got past when I was younger, I used to say like, oh, I was just lucky. I got this because I was just lucky. It's not actually that. It's that you've worked really hard and done lots of really good things. But we find it hard to say that, whereas we find it easy to go, oh, I was just in the right place at the right time. In fact, I think I said that on this podcast, actually. Yeah. I was in the right place at the right time. So there's a bit of truth to that. But I also think sometimes it feels lucky, but actually, if you looked back on everything that you'd done previously, you would say, well, it wasn't really luck. I put myself in this position. And it's a bit like, who was I can't remember her name, the vet lady, as I call her. Mia. So that thing where she's like, she got the job. Yeah.
She was on holiday in Perth and she was like, oh, this job just came up. And I was like, well, but you had to be looking for the job. Yeah,
that's right. So there is yes, there's a bit of luck to that. It was advertised while she was here or whatever. But she also put herself out there and she had this whole experience. So I think with of course, there's always a percentage of luck, and there's also this: do you fit? So there's a danger, right, within organisations that people pick talent because they fit the mould, and as we know, diverse teams actually are generally more innovative and creative. That's what all of the literature says. So there's a huge amount of positives from wanting and having a traditional type career, but we have to recognise that there's also limitations for some people in that type of career as well.
Yeah, I think there's also a thing about, I think there's a thing about luck from the perspective of, is the first company that you join the one that aligns right with your values and things like that. Like, I think there's a luck from that perspective because, you know, for me, the first job I had did not align at all with my values. In fact, it was horrendous. And it just happened I was at the right company and they found me a different team. But, you know, just because you join an organisation and it's not the right fit doesn't mean you failed.
No, that's right.
It actually, you know, and actually the flexibility that we have now to move careers and have, you know, that movement that isn't part of the traditional
that's right.
career is actually really great freeing opportunity that allows us to try different things and find the place that fits us better.
That's right. And I think so I was talking about two big kind of career orientations. So the traditional career is one, but then also what we term the contemporary careers. So, and then within the contemporary career environment, which we can all kind of recognise as where we are right now, which you know, means that although we say there's job security in a traditional career, well, there's job security in terms of you've got a job until you haven't got a job, right?
It's not the same as
it's not the same as it used to be. And yes, a traditional career, you'd work for maybe one or maybe two organisations during your career. Generally now, as you say, we're much more less loyal, I suppose, to our you're loyal while you're there. But you also then, you know, you're much happier to move around, and that's almost expected. And, you know, from my perspective working in the university sector, the more senior roles, it's very unlikely that you promote from within nowadays, rightly or wrongly, I have to say. But generally, if you're going for the top jobs, you're probably coming from a different university. And I think there's a lot of organisations that don't recognise the talent that they've got within themselves that they could do more with. But under that kind of broader contemporary career, you've got lots of different profiles. So portfolio obviously is a very big one and growing. So with lots of gig work.
Yeah, the gig economy
gig economy is huge.
Makes portfolio be much more accessible, I think.
Yeah.
I was chatting to somebody yesterday who's an executive assistant who recently has been made redundant, and I was chatting to them about potentially looking at virtual assistant work.
Oh, yeah.
Which is now actually really easy for people to pick up, and much more of like what they call a fractional role, where you kind of might do 2 days for one person and then or one organisation and then 2 days for another person, another organisation. And it's kind of like reimagining temp work.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Going back to Reed.
Yeah, back to Reed.
Yeah. So, that portfolio career, I think. So there's a section of the gig economy, which is, in my terms, it means that it's supported by those digital platforms. And there's many, many benefits for people in that. And there are lots of disadvantages as well. And that could be a whole podcast on its own.
You might need to tell me what those are.
But the portfolio career, I think, and if you think of people like, you know, if you've done your marketing degree or your communications degree, and you're trying to break into that content creation or whatever it might be, you know, you're probably going to be self-employed for a little while, picking up work so that you have in this case, an actual portfolio of work to show people when there is an opportunity to join an organisation. You often need to show your portfolio of work. So there's that type of person that would pick up or would be included in that portfolio career. It offers a huge amount of flexibility for people. I mean, as I'm sure you would say, you know, the income peaks and troughs have to be managed. They have to be very good at managing your finances. You don't have the job security that comes with working for an organisation, of course. There's a bit of a hustle culture.
I think that's been the hardest bit,
Right.
that's gone from, going from being able to get a mortgage really easily because you've got a salary that comes in, and even if you don't know that the salary is forever, that you know that you've got it for next month, and a bank will, give you, a home loan or something kind of based on that. Whereas when you don't have that kind of regular income, it feels quite different in terms of what you can plan and what you can commit to. And
I always think about that when you're, an influencer, whatever that might mean. But you can earn a lot of income doing that, doing that kind of work. But it's not like it could get ripped away from you overnight almost. So I find it really interesting how banks work with that kind of thing now.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know that you've necessarily got any less job security than you have in a corporate job,
that's
right?
True.
Because that
also could be like one day you've got a job and the next day you haven't.
But I think society treats it quite differently.
Yeah.
And
maybe that's because
we're used to the traditional.
We're used to the traditional career, and people that are probably in positions of power now are your age, my age, whatever it might be. And we also have the mental models that are different. Yeah. And we're in positions of, making organisational decisions. So I find it fascinating actually about that kind of the new jobs, and talking about, we'll have to talk about it more when we do our AI podcast, because obviously that is going to have such a big influence, and it's hard for people that have been brought up in a previous kind of paradigm. So
yeah, it's interesting. So I understand that if you run your own business, you're expected to show 2 years worth of proven income. Before they'll consider you for a loan or whatever, which is interesting because, from an employment perspective, you just need a contract and
3 months of pay slips.
A couple of months of pay slips. And so, it's that is the bit that for me has been the hardest transition. Yeah. And I'm doing fine. But also the endless kind of not knowing about next month, particularly if the economy changes or something
that's
like
right.
that.
If there's a recession, then I guess,
then, it's all on you.
Yeah. So but then if there's a recession also, then people get made redundant. So I don't know what I said before, my husband got made redundant as soon as COVID hit. It's, that management of never waste a good crisis. If an organisation is already kind of in trouble, then it was a good reason to get rid of 100 people.
Well, exactly. And I think there's a lot of you talk about AI, there's quite a lot of organisations who are using – there's quite a lot of reporting about
that's right.
how organisations are using AI as an excuse to kind of
downsize,
clean house. Yeah.
And it's – and because most of us that are actually even trying to keep up to date, which is extremely hard, I'm not sure AI is replacing that many jobs yet.
No, it's not.
So I think it is the never waste a good crisis thing happening.
Yeah. Well, on that topic, we have next month, we have quite a few AI-related episodes. So I think we'll talk more about that in this episode next month as well.
I'll read the latest stuff because it's probably changed again in a month.
It has.
And so going back to kind of different career profiles. So and then there's probably what people won't have heard of because it's more in the academic literature is around, a protean career, a boundaryless career. There's a kaleidoscope career. There's I did my research on hybrid careers, which I think for a lot of people that's probably the one that feels the best. So a hybrid career is a bit like we were talking about. It's taking the best things from a traditional career and the best things from a contemporary career and kind of blending those together. Because obviously with a contemporary career, there is a lot of – so what organisations have done from the olden days is push the risk of employability on to each individual. So the organisations used to hold that risk. They would hold their staff like you wouldn't really get made redundant. Like you might get made redundant, but it was a relatively rare thing to happen to people. You might get kind of encouraged to retire. But nowadays, of course, like all of that responsibility for continued employment sits on us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wherever you work. So there are, positive things still, but we have to recognise that we need to ensure our ongoing employability. And so we have expectations that if we're working for an organisation, that they, again, this reciprocal relationship, that they offer training and development opportunities, that they offer promotion pathways. They might not make a promotion pathway for you. They might not, there's some people that we've talked to who have been very lucky and given lots of opportunities, but they might not do that for you. It might all be you having to do that. But, there is an expectation of this reciprocal relationship.
There's definitely been a couple of companies that I've left because I felt that it was I've left because I felt like it was a one-way relationship where I was putting a whole load of effort. I was working, above and beyond. I was doing work out of hours, and I didn't feel like they were giving me anything in return. So, in one case I was on a fixed term contract and they wouldn't make me permanent. Not reflecting that in bonus or recognition at the end of the year. And it's really hard when it feels like it's one way and you're putting all the effort in and nobody
cares.
It feels like they don't care.
Right.
And so then you I think it feels like they don't value you.
Yeah.
And so if they don't value that effort, I'd rather go somewhere that does value the effort. And I think that's the benefit of the kind of contemporary careers, is that you don't feel like you have to kind of suffer.
That's right.
In silence at an organisation just because, you joined when you were a teenager your dad used to work there or whatever. Yeah. You can make those decisions.
Because because organisations don't show loyalty now, then what, individuals also there. Again, it comes back to, if you give us this, we will give you this to you in return, right? So if you take that away, then why would we not then go, well, all right, I'm willing to work really, really hard, but actually I want to feel valued and I want to be treated fairly. And so if none of that's happening, then I'm just going to go and work somewhere else. And that's the benefit of being in this kind of environment now. So I think if many of us, and that's kind of what the new research around, current university students, they want that hybridity, I suppose. They want some of the benefits of a traditional career, but understanding that there's benefits of the contemporary career. And a lot of that comes down to, flexibility, work-life balance, meaningful work. So those are the things that kind of get that really are fundamental to a lot of people's needs and values when we talk about career values. And we've talked before about aligning with your institution. So it's not a surprise really that we want the best of both worlds.
Well, the thing that's springing to my mind when you're talking about this is engagement. And, one of the things that lots of organisational change is about how engaged your employees are. So the more engaged people are, the more likely they are to come together and solve a problem or, but if you're talking about career and you're talking about value, then that's also about engagement, and it's about as you said, the quality of work that you get given. It's about how you're treated. Yeah. It's about the kind of value proposition that there is for you. And there's some really interesting research that came out earlier this year. There's like a global survey that's done by someone that might be Gartner and might not be, about that basically says that only 1 in 5 people are actively engaged at work. And I was really surprised by that because lots of organisations do engagement surveys and, they all come out as like 60 or 70%. But I think when you look at that survey has got a bunch of questions that go with it, and it's things like, has your manager spoken to you in the last week and told you that you're doing a good job?
Right, yeah.
Or has somebody sat down and had a conversation with you in the last 6 months about your career? Has somebody kind of given you constructive feedback on your performance in the last kind of whatever period? And so I think for leaders, if you're thinking about how do you help create that, create that loyalty, that means that people are going to stay working with you. It's those kind of things that you need to be looking at. Like, how are you rewarding that hard work or recognizing it? And sometimes it doesn't have to be about money or contracts.
Right.
It can just be about recognition and value and, status and those kind of things. But that's kind of, for me, that's the difference between the traditional careers, is that you've got that engagement where people are valuing and rewarding their employees kind of all the way through, versus, people making decisions to go elsewhere where they feel more valued.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I worked once with somebody who his career was in Microsoft education, I think, and they put a huge emphasis on exactly that. So, I mean, it was all tech enabled, obviously, but it was very much around, I think everybody had to say where else in the organisation they might want to work, or what promotion they wanted within the kind of HR system, as well as doing that kind of. I think they had 3-month conversations, and it was very formalised, but allowed people to really think about their career options. And then the job of the manager was to kind of try and make that happen for people. This conversation was a while ago, so it's kind of a bit vague, but
I think those big organisations do kind of regulate, if you like, those conversations by putting those systems and processes in place. I think the best leaders are the ones that don't need those systems and processes, and they're the ones that are doing it anyway. But so I think that's an interesting, just looking at those kind of different guests that we've had and their different kind of career types. I think that's a really interesting way to look at.
Yeah. What surprised me is how many people still have, let's not call it traditional, let's call it, they've got hybrid careers, right? They've got this idea of they're working for an organisation, and maybe not their whole career, but there's people that have been there 10, 15 years or whatever. So it's a very long time.
Yeah, so Annalyn at Mercedes.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely.
There's quite a few people who we've talked to who've been
they've not been in the same job,
but
they've been in the same organisation for a lot of time. So clearly that hybrid career of having that job security, being valued, having a career path is really, really valuable to people. And I think organisations or, leaders need to understand that that's obviously from a psychological perspective, of course we need that, right? It's not a surprise.
Of course not. And I think, I think always if you think about what you need and then you think about are you giving those things to your team, then I think that's a really good way of looking at it. So this month's book actually is quite connected to this topic, which I did not plan, but happens to be. I'm just getting it out for the video. So this month's book is called Hidden Potential, and it's written by Adam Grant. I'm a really big fan of Adam Grant's work. I think he is a really interesting thinker. He's a researcher at he's a professor at, I think, maybe Penn State or Wharton or somewhere in Pennsylvania. And so he's an academic. He's one of those people who's like memorized every single piece of research that he's ever read. So you talk to him about something and he can go, well, the research is it. And you're like, how do you remember all of that? Right, yeah. But he also thinks about things really interesting. And so this book is called Hidden Potential, and it talks about how do you recognise potential?
Oh, interesting.
So, we were talking about the traditional career and how organisations will kind of identify what potential looked like. And in the 80s, that probably was a, confident, tall white man called John or Paul or something. Yeah. This then actually looks at the evidence underneath potential and talks about how do you find your own potential, even if you're not a tall, straight, white man called John, or if you're not the top of the class, but actually looks at what are the unconventional ways to find potential and find potential in your team. And it's all evidence-based. He writes really good stories that go with it and uses some really good analogies. And so it's called Hidden Potential, the Science of Achieving Greater Things. And the Serena Williams has done a quote for the cover that says, brilliant, it will shatter your assumptions. So I really like this. I found it really easy to read.
One I haven't actually read. So
it actually kind of, confounds your expectations a little bit. So it kind of challenges the conventions about like straight A students being obviously the best at things, and actually kind of gives some really practical ideas of how for you can find your hidden potential. So that's this month's book.
That's just linking that back and thinking about, careers, and especially, maybe when you're a bit younger, is we always say to people you should hire based on potential, not on what people necessarily, that they can tick every box of the thing that you want them to do, because actually people can grow and learn technical skills, right?
Exactly.
But that potential and being able to identify that, and we say that that's a good thing, but actually I might actually read that book because providing advice to people on recruitment panels to go, how do you, like, we all kind of recognise potential when we see it, I think.
Yeah, so he looks at the evidence of what actually are the signs of potential, which might be different.
Yeah. Well, I would assume that it would be different to that
academic.
And also to that feeling that you get
the feeling that you have is based on your previous experience.
That's right? Exactly,
and
right.
So
you just hire people like you.
Well, exactly. And so, I think it's really interesting. I think he tries really hard to challenge conventional thinking, and I really like that.
Yeah.
I really like that about him. He's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
So, really recommend that. And then this month, so we're coming into the new financial year.
Oh, yes, we are.
Which is exciting. And I'm going to...
Makes no difference to me when I get my paycheck every few weeks.
It makes a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
Makes a big difference to me. I'm enjoying watching having lots of early mornings to watch the football.
Oh, yeah.
This month. And then we have... we've got a few AI themed. I was hoping to get them all in 1 month, but I think they're going to be scattered over 2.
Yeah.
But we have a head of AI, we have an AI expert, we have a behavioural design expert, and we have a critical thinking expert, all talking about things that we should be thinking about in relation to AI and the kind of future of work and what it means for the skills that we have.
Can't wait for that.
So I'm excited about it. I hope that it's not out of date between when we record it and when we put it out. But it's really helped me think. So I've recorded some of them already. I really think it's helped me think about AI differently. And I think July is also a 5-week month. So we've actually got four interviews in July. And then we'll be back and we can have a conversation about all of the the AI reflections that we've had from July.
Great.
And
Can't wait.
Yeah, I will see you then.
Yeah, see you later.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe in your podcast app. It helps other people find us. This podcast was produced on Noongar country. We acknowledge and respect the first storytellers of this land and the keepers of culture, and extend that respect to traditional owners and storytellers wherever you may be listening.